BetOnline.ag, proud sponsor of the show. Thank you so much for supporting us and supporting our sponsors, the best cash out options in the business. BetOnline.ag has been around for almost 30 years. They got great incentives for first-time players that sign up with BetOnline.ag. And if you're into the crypto space, those cryptocurrency deposits get a lot fatter, a little sweeter too, if you want to explore those options at BetOnline and BetOnline.ag. The Montreal Canadiens looking to expand on their rebuilding phases, right? I think we learned watching these playoffs and watching the teams go back and forth, and understanding what Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton had said when they held court on that Monday after the season, when they talk about drive, compete, toughness, size, and all of those things. So in order to get, we know you have to give. Last week, we spent a few minutes talking about how much value do these prospects have? Marco telling us about, let's be realistic here. And I think, one of the points of pride of this channel is, yeah, sometimes I'll be guilty of being a little fanboy, but I think by and large, we keep it and call it down the middle. And when we talk about, do the Canadiens really have a top 6 prospect in Laval that's ready to go, ready to kick in the front door, not walk through it, kick it in? The answer is no. So how do they get? They got to give. Who do the Canadiens have that is attractive to other teams around the National Hockey League? Marco, the one name that continues to get tossed around, I'm not in favor of it today. I know you've had a close eye on the Laval Rocket. Logan Mailloux seems to be the most talked about player that fans are saying, okay, maybe we got to trade this guy in order to get X player.
Yeah.
Let's start with Logan Mailloux as a trade chip.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know a lot of people are going to have a little bit of backlash on this. I'm not saying they should, but we're analyzing the situation. You got to give to get, right? And, I saw some people in the comments, and I mean, you tell me, but I saw some people in the comments last week say, be careful of trading a guy like Mailloux. It couldn't turn out like Mikhail Sergachev and Ryan McDonough.
I saw that.
Both of those players were comfortably in the NHL at the age of 22. Sergachev was on his route to winning a cup. It's not the same thing. I'm not to beat down the value of a guy like Logan Mailloux. I think he's got good value, and I think teams do appreciate him. Clearly, he was the centerpiece for the Canadiens in their attempt to trade for Trevor Zegras last summer, right? It was Zegras in a second for Logan Mailloux in a first in case the Canadiens did not draft Ivan Demidov. That was the deal that was in place. So clearly he is liked across the league as well. And obviously there's a lot to like. Offensive defenseman, 6'3", skates well, physical.
Nasty.
For the Laval Rocket, he's looked really good, in certain situations, especially, first series against the Cleveland Monsters. It's been a little bit more difficult now. Obviously, fans have been a little frustrated with some of his giveaways and some of the weak backhanders. I will say that he is playing injured. Like I saw him basically icing down his knee and his hand. So, maybe be a little less critical of him in context, but he is definitely playing injured, and they've already lost a guy like Wotherspoon. So to lose a guy like Mailloux in this kind of setting would be devastating for them in what they're doing. So
yeah,
everybody plays injured. But when you're a guy like him and you skate the way he does, and, it's not like his offense doesn't translate to the NHL. He's looked very good offensively in the NHL, but it's that defensive structure, staying within that structure, not letting your emotions take you out of it, not chasing the hit, being able to box out the player. These are things that come with maturation. He's gotten a lot better, but sometimes with Mailloux, it's unfortunately just the brain cramp that leads to a situation. But again, less and less and less and less. And sometimes it takes time. Sometimes especially with the fact that he didn't play so much junior because of his suspension, it takes time, and you got to get those reps back in. I think the Canadiens and other NHL teams see an NHL defenseman here, and like we talked about last week, how many right shot defensemen are there in the NHL? Maybe 60?
Do you see it?
I see an NHL defenseman.
Okay.
So
if you're telling us about patience and let him season, Marco, I don't want to move him. I don't want to move him.
You got to give to get, right? Like if he's the prospect that a team wants in a package for a bona fide number 2C that's age appropriate, I'll understand. But if you're just trading Logan Mailloux as like a throw-in a pick to try and move up in a draft, I think that's wasted value. So
right.
I think he's a valuable trade chip. I think that, getting a guy like Carrier earlier this season as a vet that you can count on the right side helps them. I think the Canadiens are going to look to improve their right side more. They may look for an immediate piece. I've seen the Canadiens. Well, I can say the Canadiens have shown interest. Now, again, shown interest is not the same as they're trying to trade for him right now, but they've shown interest in other right shot defensemen across the league. You look at Rasmus Anderson, you look at Noah Dobson, those are options, right? If you go and get guys like that, is Logan Mailloux really necessary? Right? Because then you have your right shot offensive piece, you have Carrier, and then you can kind of slot in Reinbacher, and Reinbacher eventually swaps with Carrier. Carrier goes down to the third pair. Reinbacher goes first or second pair when he reaches maturity, and you can work with that. Now, that's when a guy like Mailloux would become expendable. Now, again, I'm not saying to do it, but I am saying that if the Canadiens had a prospect that they can move that holds value, he's definitely one of them.
So when we go down the list, like I think Logan Mailloux is right up there. Obviously, David Reinbacher's not up for conversation, right?
No, but also I would say that trading him now would be the worst time to do so because of the injuries, right?
I think management would look
looked good.
Yeah,
he's looked good. I've seen scouts at the Laval Rocket game take notes every time he's on the ice. So clearly teams are paying attention just in case he's ever made available, but he's not, and the Canadiens would be foolish to try and include him.
Well, dude, I was watching again that draft video with Bobrov talking. I was looking for a soundbite of Bobrov calling Florian Xhaka a unicorn, and I couldn't find it, but I was watching, the rest of the draft table, and what they were saying about Reinbacher just leads me down the path. Obviously, it's way too premature. They've developed too much time, energy, and assets into getting him to where he's at. It would look foolish.
And I could tell you that they're very, very impressed with him, and they're very happy with how he's getting up there.
I've heard great things.
Well, for a guy that's got 10 games of 10 or 12 games of AHL experience during the season, to come into the playoffs in this kind of a situation. And again, I think, given that context and the fact that it's an all rookie line, right? He plays with Adam Engstrom, who we're going to talk about in a sec.
Correct.
They look very well together. So much so that Pascal Vincent actually swapped the pairings at one point, and it was Trudeau, who was basically the team's number one defenseman. It was Trudeau and Reinbacher on the top pair, right? So they trust him a lot.
Perfect.
So, it's going to be good. The only thing I caution against when it comes to Reinbacher is a lot of people are already penciling him into Montreal next season. Let's see what happens this summer.
Correct.
Before anything happens.
And forwards, like the equivalent of a David Reinbacher in the AHL would be over here probably by now.
The worst thing you want to do is have him make the team, struggle for 20 games, and then send them back down. Then you're going backwards.
Listen, again, that's how this season played out, Marco, watching the playoffs, to me, it just reaffirms that the Canadiens rebuild is not over and there's still room to go here, clearly. But
it's in fact,
I want to ask you this question, though. Like, we talk about Logan Mailloux, up for debate, whether you think he's the most attractive option the Canadiens could potentially dangle. Is the drop off after him? Are we talking about a goalie in terms of value appealing to the market? Like, I'm at a loss for words to look at the depth and the value that the Canadiens could move in order to get a 2C, in order to get another right shot defenseman.
If an age appropriate player makes their way in, that's going to be part of this team for 6, 7, 8 years. I get that they would try to look to make a move like that, right? It could make sense. Now,
so if Logan Mailloux is one, are the 2 first-round picks 2?
I think the 2 first-round picks have more value than Logan Mailloux.
Oh, wow. That's a good take. That's a hot take.
That's not to diminish the value of Logan Mailloux. I just feel like, actually, you know what? I'll take that back.
Yeah,
I would think that in a normal situation, in a normal draft, and a draft that is considered good to strong, those picks are worth more than Logan Mailloux.
Right.
But I think because scouts are a little down on this draft, I think Mailloux holds a little bit more value. And I think, in fact, and I like that you bring up the picks, I think that may make existing, like, already drafted prospects more valuable than usual because, a guy like Logan Mailloux, I think, is a very good chance of playing in the NHL. Now, how long he picks, what position he plays, it's a different story. Yeah. But that may be worth more than the picks because there's more certainty to it, right? We talked about this with Michael Hage. Michael Hage is worth more than the 21st overall pick that he was drafted with right now because he's steadily improved. Well, I think the same could be said with Logan Mailloux at 31. I think he's in that range where a team that's really weak at right defense could probably slide him right into their third pair next season, and he wouldn't look too out of place. Still got things to fix, but he wouldn't look too out of place, and that's great. And I think that, you know, when you talk about who's right after him, obviously a guy like Jacob Fowler has good value. I don't think the Canadians are going to be doing that in any way, shape, or form.
Agreed.
We spoke about David Reinbacher. I think David Reinbacher is right there with Logan Mailloux in terms of value, and that's considering that his value is lower because of all the injuries. Normally, he would be well above in value.
Yeah.
I think Joshua Roy is a guy that has value. I think a lot of people have written him off in Montreal, but I can tell you that that's not the case across the league. And honestly, he seems to have like the series against the Cleveland Monsters didn't really see him. Series against the Rochester Americans, you're seeing a far more competitive, combative, engaged Joshua Roy. That kind of Joshua Roy can play in the NHL. And so I think teams are paying attention. If the Canadians think that he's not part of the future for whatever reason, teams will ask. I'm telling you, teams will ask. Having that Hockey Canada shine on him as well and whatnot, and the fact that he has NHL experience and has shown that he could score when given the opportunity, I think he makes sense as well as an option. I'm not saying trade all the prospects here. I'm just saying he's a trade chip if the right deal comes along. But one guy I know that scouts are starting to pay attention to, and one guy I feel is potentially the diamond in the rough in the Canadians prospect pool, playing, I mean, like North American pro here. I'm not necessarily we're not going to talk about Michael Hage. We're not going to talk about Vincent Zeror, but just like if you think of like close to NHL ready players, Adam Engstrom is really turning heads. Like
I thought you were going to say Oliver Kapanen. That's who I thought.
No, actually, Oliver Kapanen to me, had his season ended in Sweden, and that would have been it, I think he'd have more value than he does now.
Oh, he scored that huge goal against Cleveland. He had a good first round, right?
Yeah, not really. That's the thing, right? Oliver Kapanen's been okay, right? But nothing like you would expect a player that played in the NHL playoffs to come into Laval and be borderline dominant, right? But when you're looking at like if you're looking at the way that they played against the Rochester Americans, 19-year-old or 18, I forget when he turns 19, but anyway, drafted the last summer in Consta Hellenius, looks to be more dangerous than Oliver Kapanen. And Oliver Kapanen was playing against men on the first line in Sweden. So that to me tells you that when you don't see that kind of offensive production come in, and you're kind of waiting for that offensive kickback from a player, that kind of puts his doubt into question, is him being more than a fourth or third line center in the NHL. So there's not that much value there. Same applies to a guy like Owen Beck. I think Owen Beck will be more valuable to the Canadians than he would be on the trade market at this moment. But a guy like Adam Engstrom screams top four ability in the way that he plays. His mobility, like when he's on the ice for the Laval Rocket, and I hope people pay attention. You know, you can go back and look at the one goal that the Laval Rocket scored in game 4 against the Rochester Americans last week. He just picked the puck up, circled across the zone, got rid of coverage through great skating, took a shot, deflected, boom, Joshua Roy scored. He's so fundamentally good when it comes to his skating mechanics that easily translates to the NHL. I see him, you know, being a third pair defenseman at least in the NHL with potential to go higher. And I think a guy like Pascal Vincent said the same thing. He's like, we're not even sure what his ceiling is because he just keeps improving. At the beginning of the season, he was making defensive errors, losing pucks.
Yeah.
They would bench him. They took him out of the lineup for a couple of games because they wanted to restructure. Now his game has reached levels of structure that I find really complement his pairing with a guy like David Reinbacher. And, you know, when you think about it down the line, right, like his kind of offensive ability is going to be extremely valuable. You look at the playoffs, defensemen that are able to pinch, move the puck, and keep the puck with possession in the offensive zone are worth their weight in gold.
Amen.
And you have a player like him, right? So people are going to say, well, why would you trade him? Well, they can't all play in your lineup.
Exactly.
So we talk about prospects, right? Do I think a guy like Adam Engstrom has value? Absolutely. I think Adam Engstrom has value. And we're talking about just prospects, right? We can even go as far as to say young players and throw in names like Arbor Jacki, hides for tomatoes. And then, you know, Jaden Struble also kind of fits into that conversation because at one point they're going to have to trade out some left shot D Mike Matheson makes the most sense, but in a situation where they want to prospect, those are guys. So Adam Engstrom is your insurance policy in case you decide to move out one of those guys. And he doesn't play that same particular style, but he's not a small defenseman either. 6'2", about 200 pounds. So like he's a guy that I walked right next to him. He's a guy that could hold his own, and he has been holding his own offensively. So a guy to watch out for in terms of trade chip. And I think Oliver Kapanen, the Canadiens have Oliver Kapanen, Owen Beck, and now Fleury and Xhekaj, who seem to be the three guys that are probably going to be duking it out for the third and fourth line center 2 to 3 years from now, right?
Yeah.
They're only going to be able to keep two, if that, right? Because they also signed Jake Evans to a 4-year deal, right? So you're going to want that experience.
Lots going on.
So I'm saying like Oliver Kapanen could definitely be a trade chip as well, because at the end of the day, do the Canadiens really need him in the lineup next season? Is there room for him in the lineup next season? And the reality is maybe not, right? Because if you look at them right now, look at that bottom six. So where's he going to end up? He's going to end up in Laval on the first line all season. Is what's more valuable to the Canadiens? Developing him, or if you can help them go and get a piece they need now at a position of need that can help them for years, right? So that's the way I see it. It doesn't necessarily mean trade all these prospects. I'm not even saying they're going to trade any of them, but I'm just saying that, like before, because of the draft and the way that it's being perceived outside of the top 10, some of these prospects could be worth more than the picks that the Canadiens have to offer.
And that's why go ahead.
That's why I could see the Canadiens playing ball. I think teams with deep prospect pools may end up having more leeway in terms of leverage for deals this summer, and it's what I'm hearing from scouts, than teams that loaded up on picks. And I think that's kind of the scenario we're looking at right now, where everybody's like, trade all the picks. Yeah, you're going to need teams that want those picks. And before the combine happens, and the combine's in a week or so, you're not really going to get a sense of which teams are interested in drafting more than once or higher than they currently are. So difficult to tell, but surer things with less risk, those are going to be higher in value.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube.com. You can follow Marco D'Amico at MN D'Amico. Like and subscribe. Marco, thanks for an outstanding week. And we're back next week with fresh content and more storylines to develop as they develop in real time. Marco, thanks as always.
Always a pleasure, guys.